I was making the point at the end of our last session that the believer and the unbeliever have conflicting philosophies, have conflicting overall outlooks on the nature of reality and how we know what we know and how we should live our lives. Another way of putting this is to say that the believer and the unbeliever have conflicting worldviews, a term that I know you've heard already in the conference, and you're going to hear a lot more before you go home. Let me give you a definition of what I mean by a worldview. A worldview is a network of presuppositions which are not tested by natural science, and in terms of which all of experience is related and interpreted. Once again, a worldview is a network of presuppositions not tested by natural science, in terms of which all experience is related and interpreted. A person's worldview is a network, first of all. It's not just one belief. It's a whole system of beliefs. But the kind of beliefs we are dealing with when we talk about a worldview are that special variety of beliefs called presuppositions. We'll say more about what a presupposition is later, but for now, suffice it to say that a presupposition is not just any assumption a person has. It's a very fundamental or logically basic assumption. It is, in fact, the precondition of that person's thinking, because a person's presuppositions about the nature of reality and the nature of knowledge and the nature of human conduct and value, a person's presuppositions provide the precondition for choosing the problems that you consider genuinely problematic, giving you a method for discovering and resolving, providing for you the standards of interpretation. Everybody has just such a network of presuppositions. Now, that isn't to say that everybody knows they have these presuppositions. I mean, obviously, a person can have tuberculosis without knowing he or she has tuberculosis. In fact, a person can have tuberculosis even when they deny that they have tuberculosis. You may go to your next-door neighbor, this guy who lives for all the gusto in life that he can get, you know, and try to talk to him about philosophy and say, you know, you've got your presuppositions worldview too. He'll say, no, I don't. I don't even want to think about that stuff. So get away from me. I don't believe in thinking about philosophy. Just give me a beer and turn on the game on the tube. He may tell you that, but he's got his presuppositions anyway. It's just a matter of getting him to think self-consciously about his presuppositions. Everyone's got presuppositions. If they didn't, they wouldn't even know where to begin in the morning. I want you to stop and think about this for a minute. If you had to, when you wake up in the morning, you don't assume anything now. You just have to start from scratch, deciding what you're going to believe about life and about yourself. Well, should you sit up in bed, first of all, get dressed, have some breakfast, and then say, okay, now I've got to apply myself to the really tough questions. What is real? How should I live my life? No, because you've already decided that certain things are real and that you should live your life a certain way just by deciding to get up out of bed. And how do you know what you know? Are you the same person you were yesterday? Are you the same person you were a week ago or a month ago? You go down to the table and your mother says, hi, Johnny, how you doing today? You just take it for granted you're Johnny. But you see, that assumes that there's personal identity between you, the Johnny of this morning, and you, the Johnny of last week. Now I am sure that you're all sitting there saying, this guy has lost it. He's worried about whether I'm the same person I was a week ago. Well, believe it or not, there are reasons why philosophers get worked up about questions like that. But the reason is not that they just get up and this question confronts them. You see, that's the kind of question that comes after you've thought about other kinds of questions that require looking into assumptions and methods, and then they start testing their assumptions and methods, And they get into deeper sorts of levels of abstraction, and finally they ask the kind of things which make people wonder if philosophers are sane at all. But since you think I'm insane, I'll play the game with you. Then how would you prove that you are the person that you were last week, allegedly? How would you do that? What if I hypothesized that God created the world this morning? He created everybody in it and created them with the memory bank that you now use as memory, thinking that you existed a week ago and that you were doing whatever you were doing according to your memory a week ago. Now you may say, well, that's a silly kind of thing. Who cares? And maybe it is. But I'm from the land of fruits and nuts, and so we're kind of nutty about these matters. I might still say, okay, it seems kind of silly, but then how do you know otherwise? When you get up in the morning, you took that for granted. You assumed identity of your person over time. And that, I want to assure you now, all kidding aside, is one of the most perplexing problems in philosophy. Personal identity. You assumed that memory was reliable. You assumed you could trust your senses. You assumed you should live in a certain way. You assumed that eating a certain kind of food was good for your body or would be pleasurable. You assumed a lot. You didn't explore and discover all those things new every day. Everybody has presuppositions. Everybody has preconditions for living their life, evaluating things, knowing what they know. And when you go off to college and you find people with an antagonistic point of view to your Christianity, what I want you to see is that the presuppositions that that person is using, the worldview that that person is using in opposing your Christian outlook or worldview is going to be the crux for defending the faith.